Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I have to check my watch because I've been up for a long time already. Good afternoon, Just. Hope everybody's well. If you're here already, fantastic. Please say hello. If you're not, I won't judge you because we have only just started. So, Faris, we will give everybody 90 seconds to join.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you.
No, they're all barred. Lock the door. Yeah. I used to be a school teacher, and one of the other teachers said that he used to close the door exactly on the time the class started, and he'd have all these kids outside trying to get in.
Yeah. That was probably me knocking on the door. Yeah. Actually, I prefer I probably just walked off.
Yeah, exactly. If I would be like, don't encourage them, right? They've got to be it. But no, welcome to everyone, whether you're 90 seconds late or just on time.
Yeah. But yeah, no. But then I don't like silences, so I can't sit here in silence. So I have to mumble, and it's nice. I feel like I've got somebody else who could easily fill this space with me.
Yeah, I mean, what's to a silence? Actually, I often teach people about the power of silences, but they're so hard, aren't they, to keep and maintain?
Yeah. Do you know what though? Since I started my coaching career, I found them easier to hold within a one-to-one space. It's difficult to start with, but as you get into it, you're like, this is actually kind of comfortable. I enjoy this person's uncomfortability. I just can't do it on a podcast. It's just weird.
Yeah. Well, like the old radio stations, they couldn't have silence. So they'd have someone, if it ever got silence, they'd have the automated message.
Yeah.
Which obviously makes for the 2-minute silence at Armistice Day very difficult to do on radio.
Yeah, I can be. Yeah, well, that would be me. I think I would be somehow trying to fill ad-lib that space.
Yeah.
But we made it, mate. We actually made it for 2 minutes worth of ramble time. So, I'm pretty happy with that.
Right, that we've set our benchmark. Let's get going.
Let's get going. Everybody, if you are here, please say hi. And if you have any questions for Faris, please add them to the chat or to the comments on the post, and I will ask those questions to him. Or even if there are questions to me, I can answer as well, but mainly to Faris, please. But welcome. I'm really looking forward to today. It's going to be a really interesting conversation. Me and Faris have known each other for a while, and this is probably a long overdue episode. And Faris's success equation is a really interesting concept when I first learned about it, and actually can see how it has such an impact on individuals and teams. And so I'm really excited to kind of get his insights and for him to share this knowledge, and for him to share about it. I mean, this has been copyrighted, this equation, so it's a pretty cool equation which I think everybody could kind of use and learn about. So thanks, mate.
Welcome, and I'm more than happy to always talk about the equation. It's funny you said the copyright thing. Just earlier this week, I was just having my breakfast and suddenly my phone pinged from 4 different people going, have you seen on LinkedIn, I know we're on LinkedIn at the moment, this following post, and they all sent me the same post. It was someone who was broadly using a version of the equation and had changed one little bit, and they were all outraged on my behalf, and I was a bit annoyed, but I was equally warm glow that 4 people associated the equation with me, and they instantly picked up the phone. So I was like, it works, right? When you get a brand thing out there, it only ruddy works. So yes, it is a trademark equation, and it's great to be with you today.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, now I'm thinking about it, should I have put in some sort of copyright? Can I have on our marketing copyrighted Faris, just so you know I don't get in trouble? I don't want to fine.
It's all right. I won't send the lawyers after you, Rich.
I appreciate that.
I'll let it slide this one time.
No, I appreciate that. Look, let's get started. What I'm going to do, as always within this, is just get me out of the way so I can throw the ball over to you and just allow you to kind of really share a load of knowledge. So if you don't know who I am and you are here listening, my name's Rich. I am a high performance coach. I do a few different things, from public speaking to running 2 different companies. The first company is a Wellbeing of Work company, which is associated to the Wellbeing chat, which we are on now. And the other one is a coaching and leadership performance training company, where I help organizations and leaders perform at their best My passion is sport and performance and well-being. So linking those three things together to get people to really maximize what they're doing from a work and life perspective, and how they can implement that. But also how they can implement the learnings from sport into their teams to really kind of drive home positive performance and good team culture. So that's me out of the way. If you want to know a bit more about all that kind of stuff and want to know a bit more about some of the public speaking or workshops we do, please drop me a line and we can do that offline. More importantly, let's get Faris to say hi and introduce himself properly, and then we'll get into it. So Faris, over to you, mate.
Well, thank you, Rich. And it is just as important to understand more about you, and you're doing great work, and I love it. Richard and I have known each other well. I'm Faris Ranke. I run it's Shiageto Consulting, which has been in existence for about 5 years. And Shiageto is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone. Shiageto is what's used to sharpen knives and blades, but in our context, we sharpen people and companies. We do that through our equation, but really what it's about is getting teams working better together, getting more out of teams to be smarter, work better, more focused. And I sort of come to this and set up the company based on 12 years of strategy consulting prior to this. So I was a very high IQ person solving complex problems for mainly oil and gas companies out there. And before that, I worked for an oil and gas company in their strategy team. And a long time ago, I was a secondary school teacher. I used to teach maths and economics. And that took me around the world and back to the UK. So had quite a bit of different experiences, and I put it all together under Shiageto. And now we work with some of the biggest companies around the world to get their teams more effective.
Yeah, mate, that's quite the journey and quite the mix of different things.
Yeah,
and it is. Yeah, I mean, we were talking offline just about kind of that travel and the amount. I didn't realize actually you traveled with the teaching as well. I thought it was mainly this, but it sounds like actually it's from the whole journeys where you've done so much traveling around the world to get different experiences.
It has, yeah. When I left university many moons ago, I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. The job market was pretty dire. So I went, I've always wanted to go to Latin America. How can I go there? I'll do it through teaching. So I ended up, my first teaching gig was in the British School of El Salvador, which is a random location because it was the most dangerous country in the world. I've got so many stories. Right, we literally have 4 or 5 kids kidnapped a year from the school, and I was teaching the British school there, so certainly made it interesting. I mean, for anyone who hasn't been a teacher, it is like a cauldron. Right, kids are the toughest audience, and you learn some great skills, or you sink, basically. So. I taught in El Salvador, I taught in Nepal, I taught in Palestine, and then I taught in Tottenham. Funnily enough, Tottenham, North London, and that was the worst. But and that's what led me to leave teaching. But I got some great skills, so and seen a lot of the world at the same time.
Yeah, it's such a sad story. You go all these lovely places abroad, and then come home to Tottenham, and then go, "Oh, actually, I don't think this is for me." And now I feel sorry for all of the teachers.
Yeah,
in the UK right now.
Yeah. Great teachers, wrap them in cotton wool, and they're doing great stuff. And if they don't want to be a teacher anymore, they give me a ring. Maybe we could do with your services in Shiageto. But yes, teaching was my first career. Really useful. Did get to see a lot of the world, learned a lot. And do you know what was also really interesting is when I tried to switch away from teaching, Rich, because I naively thought I could just get a job. And what I discovered after sending my CV to 30 companies was they don't hire teachers. One HR director wrote me a letter back saying, "You're a teacher. Why don't you stay being a teacher?" I don't know why I applied for my job. And I thought, wow, how sort of gut wrenching is that they don't value the skills at all, but managed to overcome that hurdle in my own unique way.
Yeah, don't worry. I did the same over COVID and applied for different roles, and they don't apply a business owner. They don't kind of what's the word? Hire business owners either, with all the skill sets that business owners have. So I know your pain.
Yeah. It's amazing how people just use labels conveniently and don't unpack them. But that's a valuable lesson, right? You've got to do the unpacking on their behalf because they're not going to take the effort.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, our first detour.
I knew there'd be many.
I did too, don't you worry. Our first detour. Thanks for sharing. I could probably have a conversation about your journey as a fellow businessman for the 50 minutes we're going to be talking for. But let's not do that. Let's talk about your success equation. And look, rather than me trying to butcher this, I'm just going to throw this over to you and allow you to share this however you like. Let's start with what it is, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So when I said I put together all my experiences, I was sat in my consulting firm, as a partner in a consulting firm, and I'd become a bit disillusioned with the work that we do because I wasn't sure it was making an impact. And so I informally went back to the clients I'd worked with previously, and just over a beer, over a coffee, I said, "Can you be honest to me? The sort of strategy I wrote for you all those years ago, did you actually do it?" And what I discovered is 90% of them hadn't done the strategy that we'd written for them. And not because it was the wrong strategy. It's because they either didn't understand it, they didn't have enough bandwidth to do it, they had politics, so one person liked it, but somebody else didn't like it. All these different human problems that stopped a great strategy. And bear in mind, the companies I was working for doing these strategies, the BPs, the Shells of the world, they would pay millions of pounds for these strategies, right? So it seemed bonkers that they weren't actually using them. And that's where I first came across the idea that it's not just about IQ, like having the perfect strategy. If you don't have the right conditions of EQ, and EQ in this instance means people buying into it, team working well, then you could hand the best idea in the world to a group of people, but if they were dysfunctional, it's not going anywhere. So I was like, well, you need the idea, that's the IQ. You need the team working well. But then I kept thinking, I've met teams that work really well together and have a great idea. Why are they not successful? And that's when the penny dropped around this third component, what we call the FQ, which is focus quotient, that the team needs to be focused. The best teams in the world that I've ever met are super focused. They focus on one or two things. They do it really well. They quieten all other distractions. They remove all the barriers in their way, and they just do it. And that's what I saw with the clients when I did this audit. The ones who were successful were the ones who also threw focus into the mix. And so when I stepped back, I was like, that's the secret to success. You need IQ, EQ, and FQ. And so many times you can instantly spot which of the ones they're missing and when they're going to not be successful. So that's what I set up the business to do. We can help across all three pillars. And it's really interesting where we spend most of our time helping in different kinds of organizations.
Okay. And so with that statement, where do you spend most of your time?
Yeah, I would say the biggest area we go in is into high IQ organizations, engineering firms, legal firms, people who are really good at what they do, right? They are very, very technically competent. They are, they might be the best. And where they lack is EQ, right? We do a lot of work in the EQ space. They are really bad at communicating with each other. They're really bad at getting out of the detail. They're really bad at making it exciting and simple. So we do a lot of work for those high IQ people in the EQ space. And then the other place we do a lot of work is highly creative industries, where they work well together. They're kind of fun, bouncy, but they often lack focus. A lot of startups that we work with lack that real ruthless focus of saying, actually, there's only 20 of us. We're only going to focus on this one thing. So that's where we tend to help them.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, as always, when I think about teams and you began talking, I was like, I reference sports teams all the time in my head, and I go, okay, so the IQ to me is sent out to the Galacticos, which was the Real Madrid team, who were the best team, right? All the best individuals, the best quality players, but because they didn't have the EQ, which was that togetherness and the ability to work together, everybody in the right place to be able to make sure this team thrived, then they didn't thrive. They didn't do as well as they could have.
Yeah.
Right? To me, that's kind of what the IQ and EQ is, right?
The IQ and EQ,
team. And then the FQ obviously is just getting people to focus towards that one thing. But I guess when that's a shared goal or clarity on what they're going through, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you know, the great example, carrying on the sports analogy and the football analogy, there's a reason that teams who are only chasing one trophy are disproportionately successful, right? You always say this, the Champions League curse, when people, you know, the teams that are involved in the Champions League have more, that's they're diluting their focus, right? That's the classic FQ. But whereas, you know, pick a Brentford or someone who's only going after one, you know, one cup, they're going to do disproportionately better in that, right? So that FQ flows in different aspects, but really having that simplification. Yeah. And I often tell the story about FQ. I had the pleasure of meeting a lady called Adriana Barrington, who is the youngest person to have climbed the 14 highest mountains in the world on her own, right? And she did that age 23.
Oh, wow.
Right? Wow. So 23, she conquered her first mountain when she was, I think, 15, because her dad was an explorer. Mm-hmm. And at the age of 15, having conquered the first mountain, she made the bold declaration this was going to be her goal. Mm-hmm. And what she then did was re-engineer her entire life around it. Mm-hmm. So she dropped out of school. She chose not to have a social life, like not do what other 15 and 16-year-olds did. And she dedicated like the next 8 years of her life on this sole goal. Now that's the extreme version. It's like Cristiano Ronaldo. You know, this is what I do. Therefore, everything flows into it. All the life choices I make. Yeah. That is, you know, extreme FQ.
And so that's a really interesting point, right? Because when I speak to high performers, both in the business world and in the sports world, FQ is something that really stands out to me then, because it's the thing that gives you the drive to do all the extra work. When I think of Kobe Bryant or LeBron or Michael Jordan from the basketball world, they're the ones that they put all this extra work in because they're trying and they're striving to be the greatest player ever, but also what they can be. And is that FQ?
That is FQ, yeah. And how we translate it for people in companies is often companies, you know, for one reason or another, are trying to achieve lots of things, right? So many times I walk into a company, they're doing 200 strategic initiatives. You know, they're launching a new product, they're entering a new country, they're doing a new IT system, right? And they don't account, like, what does that mean for the person on the shop floor? That means there's 200 things they could be involved in. And every day they have to independently make a decision. Should I spend my time here or here or here, right? Whereas if the company or the bosses said, there's only 3 things happening here. And your work has to flow into one of these 3 things. And if it doesn't, we've got to ask questions of why you're doing it, right? That would massively help everyone on the shop floor. But they don't do that. They keep the 200 initiatives there and then go, well, why are we're not delivering on all 200? Right? Because you're giving so many conflicting signals to people out there. And actually, you've got to take some of the blame, right? You're not focused enough.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Because I always think that FQ, when I meet high performers, is the thing that stands out. It's the thing that's for me, because it's the thing that drives them to do the 10,000 hours, the 20,000 hours worth of work to be the best. And whether that's to learn the IQ, normally this is where they miss out, right? Like the FQ and the IQ of these high performers is normally where they excel because they focus so much on the intelligence or the ability, where sometimes they forget around actually everybody else also makes a big impact, especially in teams. When you look at team sports, they need to be able to be part of a team. And I think this is where, I mean, going back to sport, right? And Michael Jordan, but that's when he really transformed, when he understood the triangle system at the Chicago Bulls. He went from the one of the best players to then one of the best team players, and they won 6 championships, right?
Yeah. I mean, the team is where it ebbs and flows, right? As you said, the Galacticos will never be as successful as a highly functioning team. Yeah. And a lot of people miss that.
Yeah. Okay. I've got myself excited with sport. I have to get myself back into this. Okay. Is there any more detail within that equation around the individual elements of it?
So let's unpack it a little bit, right? So how do we go in and help IQ, and we can relate these to sports? So IQ is obviously people have great technical skills, but it's getting the best idea out of people. Now, what you find in the IQ space is even really smart people tend to think in the same way whenever faced with any problem. And so they will generate the same solutions. And so the challenge in IQ is often that they don't generate enough ideas, right? I always say to a client, you should be picking the best out of 100 ideas, not the best out of 3 ideas. And if you haven't come up with 100 ideas, you're going to be in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's often where we go in and help with the IQ pillar, because they're really stuck. They can't get more ideas out, and there's always more ideas. So that might be introducing other people who think differently to them, or it might be teaching them techniques to challenge their own thinking. So that's a big part of it, the generation, the level of creativity in a team or in a business. Next is, are they prioritizing and actually picking rather than sort of over-indexing on the ones they feel most comfortable with? And then third, are they actually stress testing those ideas before they go all in? Right? It's amazing how many companies develop a strategy, spend billions, launch it, and you go, have you ever actually tried it, tested it before you? No. All right. All right. So that doesn't sound like a great place to be. And there are ways to test strategies without spending vast amounts of money, right? So that all sits under the IQ. And again, it's a bit like in the sports world, it also applies, right? You know, how are we going to set, what formation we're going to play? All right, why are you picking that one? Why have you dismissed the other ones? Okay, how do you know this formation will work? All right, before we retrain everyone, how do you know it's going to work? What happens if it doesn't work? What's your fallback? Right, so that all falls under the IQ pillar. Right, so IQ, we can always have better ideas. They can always be sharper. The next pillar, the EQ, are you working well as a team? All right, and you know, many leaders get frustrated with their team. They say, well, I told them. Why are they not getting it? Right? And in this pillar, it's, do the team get on well? Can they be honest with each other? Are you talking to them in their preferred communication style? A lot of leaders only focus on the broadcast. Well, I told them, right? They don't focus on the receive. Is this person actually absorbing the information? Do they feel safe? Can they say, look, I didn't understand, I disagree? So that all falls under the EQ panel. So we do a lot around how teams are connected, how they talk to each other, how safe they feel. That all kind of falls in that bucket. And then the third bucket is that focus, is prioritization. We do a lot around prioritization, getting them to say no to stuff. We do a lot around looking for barriers towards their success and removing them. And it's amazing how often there are barriers in businesses, right? And stupid things sometimes, right? I often talk about the broken printer. Have you ever worked in an office that's had a broken printer, or a printer that just doesn't work, or right? Yeah. You think everyone gets up and goes through the same frustrations. They go up to the printer, it's not working. They, might check the print, the ink levels and blah. And what you're doing is everybody's losing 10 minutes of their day. And if you add that up across the business, that's a lot of time, right? And a lot of money waste. And so if the best thing for that company is just get a new printer, right? That is a classic minor FQ barrier. Right. And there will be stuff like this in your processes, in how your company's set up, that just drain time, robs people of time and sort of focus in the business. So it's kind of like scanning for those, anticipating those and removing them ahead of schedule, not waiting for you to hit them and then having to form a committee. How do we overcome this? So there's a lot about that sort of, risk assessment. We call them pre-mortems, where you assume things are going to go wrong and try and fix them in advance. So that's all at the sort of company level. There's a lot you can do, and that's where we spend our time.
Yeah. Do you know what? And through this, I'm going EQ to me is really where well-being at work really comes through. That frustration at each other and the frustration, or the way that people are working together, or the things in the business which really stress on well-being and put a strain on that team well-being, which I think is a big part of what the world's struggling with now, and what leaders and team individuals have to really focus on and improve.
Yeah, completely right. I think we have moved, in my experience, we've moved into a much more polarized world where people take offense easy, or feel like they can attack each other rather than look to find the common ground. And that causes problems around well-being. It causes teams to break down and people not to get aligned. So it's now more important than ever to get the well-being and get the EQ flowing again.
Yeah. I want to ask some things about what we can do about that later on, because obviously the well-being side of things is going to be important for people for there. And then the FQ really, the thing that resonated with me, especially with the printer analogy, was, have you heard of Marginal Gains by Dave Brailsford?
Yeah.
That printer analogy is really along the similar lines to that, right? Of, let's think outside of the box to go, what could be the thing that helps the athlete or the team improve? And it is just get rid of the printer and get a new printer, because that time is time given back to the team or the individual, which can help them perform better. Which means a marginal gain, right?
Yeah. There's loads of marginal gains, and there's so much inefficiency or bad setup in companies. Take a classic one where I spend a lot of my time meetings, right? How meetings are run. Genuinely, and I'm going to stick my neck out, I'd say majority of meetings are terribly run. Right? They have no agenda. They're not clear on why everyone is in the room who should be in the room. They over focus on getting through every point on every slide, not having the right conversations around the slides or the topic. And they could just be, a lot of them could just be scrapped entirely, right? And sorted by an email or something. So if you can just go in and make improvements there, just think of the benefit. Actually, I've got a great story. I was seconded into a company as the commercial director a few years ago, and my job was to find an extra 100 million in sales because the company wasn't doing that well, right? And that was double what they'd done the previous year. So my boss, the MD, she was very impatient, and she initially told me, "Look, Faris, you've got 2 weeks to write me a report where we're going to get this 100 million from." And after a week, she knocked on my door and said, "I don't have the 2 weeks. Tell me now." And I said, "Look, I still need 2 weeks, right? But I'm going to tell you instantly what we should do." And she said, "Okay, what is it?" I said, "We're going to teach people how to run meetings in this company." And she said, "What the hell's that got to do with my sales?" I said, "Have you been to any meetings here? People turn up 5 minutes late. They just sit on bean bags. They have a nice chat. There's no actions. There's no follow-ups. It's just a waste of time." Right? It's massively inefficient. And she said, no, I completely agree with all those things, but I still don't see how that will help with sales. And I said, trust me. And she said, okay, well, I'm going to give you 3 weeks. You can teach people how to do meetings, but that's what I'm going to give you. And so we taught people how to run proper meetings within 3 weeks. Within 6 weeks, sales performance had gone up by 1.5%. Right? The flow through from both I get it, I need to do this action. And time saved and all these things. Right? And I was like, there you go. Right? We're going to find other things like that. Right, they're going to make a difference because people do not actually monetize and sort of value how the impact of bad meetings.
Yeah, there's all those different ideas, and you said come back to the IQ, right? That's an idea of what you can do to improve your team and the way your team work. Right.
Yeah, and I had when I presented my paper, I had 100 of these ideas.
Yeah,
and I said, I'm not sure all of these will work, but at least we've got 100. Now we can pick the top 10. And let's get going.
Yeah, I really love the idea of here's everybody in the team bring together 5 ideas kind of concept, and from that let's figure out what the best 10 are and go from there.
Always. Yeah, that's what I've always been taught, and it amazes me when people don't generate more ideas.
It benefits, and this comes back to Wellbeing, right? It gives people a voice. It allows them to feel like they're involved. Psychological safety. All of those things, it just builds and boosts in a team, and it's so important. I think it's so underrated.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, I tell people the strategy development or the ideas generation is also a great EQ builder. Right, generating ideas, the way you run it, if you include everyone, they feel like they own the strategy, that they've been part of So really draw it out, make the most of it, do it positively, rather than do it on your own in a room.
Yeah, it feels like it's coaching, right? And there's the benefits of coaching, that kind of, as you said, buy-in, engagement, the motivation. I always use this analogy when I'm talking about the importance of autonomy and that kind of feeling like you're having a say. Is if I said to somebody, look, the thing you need to do to improve your well-being is run a marathon. Your first instinct is to go, no, it's not. I'm not going to do that, right? But when you choose to make that decision and you're involved in that decision making, your engagement in the training is going to be higher. Engagement in everything else you have to do around that is going to be higher, more motivated, and you're focused to do that work. And I feel like by getting people to add ideas, as you said, the 100 ideas concept when it comes to IQ and the EQ, it's just going to make everybody's engagement and the team well-being way better, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. Right, but it's so easily skipped over by dominant leaders in particular.
Yeah,
that it's you sometimes have to bring them back.
Yeah, I think it's a really good kind of next step or next question for me to ask is like, what's the biggest barrier to all of this? I think for me it sounds great, and I don't understand why people potentially aren't even doing this in the first place, especially once now. Like if it was me having a team now, just this 20-minute conversation, I'd be like, okay, how do I change this? How do I use this concept? What's the barrier?
So the barrier is ego, self-awareness, right? It's and I often talk about this. In the first year, I discovered trying to broach these subjects was almost like attacking a leader's capabilities. It was saying, you're either not smart enough, you don't know how to get your team working well together, or you're not focused. And they'd be like, no, I'm a leader. Of course I can do all those things. Right? So it's that ego and awareness is a big, big barrier. And, it's not malicious. Sometimes it's just naive, right? They don't see it. It's like, I was recently brought into an organization. I won't name them for the sake, but talking to the boss, he said, can you just come in, do some sessions with the team around something different? But when I walked in and met the team, I was like, this team doesn't feel right. They don't feel like they like each other or trust each other. So I just started off with a quick survey around psychological safety that we mentioned. And I explained, different levels of psychological safety. And I said, where would you put yourself on this scale anonymously? And it was a scale of 1 to 5. The team put themselves at 0.8. Which is the lowest I've had of any team. And the boss was absolutely shocked because, he was the one person in the room who scored them at like a 4. And I was like, okay, well, there's your big problem, right? That you've got a complete disconnect to how everyone on the floor is feeling. And no wonder you're not getting through your ideas. You're not, so we're going to have to go back to first principles and get that fixed. So it was just that, he was so, and there's so many times there's that penny drop moment for a boss or a leader. Oh, I didn't realize I was doing that to the team. I didn't realize, okay, we're not here to blame, we're here to fix.
Okay, then what else? Because that's obviously just one element of it all. Where else are the barriers?
So every barrier, every one of those pillars has a barrier, right? Your ego, your intellect is your own barrier in IQ. You go, well, I've already solved this problem. And I say, well, you're in dangerous territory there, right? If you think you've already solved the problem, because nobody has solutions. People only have hypotheses, is what I say, because it's a different situation. The EQ barrier is really bad people skills, right? An inability to listen, an inability to empathize. Those really create barriers for teams. And the focus one is really interesting. It's an inability to let go, right? A lot of people understand the logic that you need to do less, but actually getting them to let go is really hard. Right, it's a bit like if you've ever tried doing a clear out of your house, right? You go, oh no, I just want to keep that. I just want to keep. I get it, right? Because I'm also of that like. But people do it with meetings, people do it with projects, people do it with relationships, and they don't see how much this is adding up and the drain it's causing. So that's a real big challenge in the FQ bucket.
Yeah. So my brain's going through everything, going, oh, I'd love to watch this in play, and how you measure it. So that's a good question. How do you measure this? What's your tools to measuring these pillars, but then also the collective?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so there are tools to measure each of these, but here's the thing: we don't overfixate on the measurement, because at the end of the day, the work that we do is, I'm still a strategy consultant at heart. I am here to solve a strategic problem. So if you strip it back, and this is what I always say to individuals, strip it back to what is the specific problem or outcome you want. And usually in a business context, it's we want more sales, we want less cost, we want higher customer engagement or a higher employee satisfaction scores. I'm like, okay, so that's the metric we're going to measure, right? Rather than introduce a artificial third metric around FQ and IQ, I said, that's what we're going to measure, and that's what we're going to move the dial on. Right. So I'm going to get you more focused so that you increase your sales. Right. It's a bit like that example I told about the 100 million of additional sales. The woman didn't care about the metrics around meetings, how many meetings we're having, how long they're taking, which we could have set up a whole team to measure. Right. But in my view is that's a distraction. This is just, we're teaching you that technique to get the more sales. And that's the thing you measure every week and you hold us accountable for. So
by measuring all of that, getting a team to measure that, you're then adding another thing to take away from the focus, right?
Exactly. You're right. And anytime you introduce a new tool, this is what I would say, that's a change program. So anytime I go, it's amazing how many leaders go, oh, I've just discovered this new piece of software. We've all got to move to Slack or use Monday.com. I'm like, well, there you go. There goes at least a third of all your meetings, because now you've started a mini change program. So unless it's delivering real big benefit, you're going to just have to deal with people grumbling about it. People go, oh, I didn't know how to use it. Right. So you'll lose a third of all your meetings for the next 6 weeks just on teaching people the new tech.
Yeah.
Whereas could you have done it another way? Maybe.
And also the backlash from bringing in change, because nobody likes change, right?
Nobody likes change. Right? Only change credits. You can only tell a team to change something so many times.
Yeah. It's really interesting getting into this. I'm really enjoying, like, I can visualize all of these different issues.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what? I'd like to play out a scenario. That scenario you spoke about earlier on with the psychological safety side of things, when you ask people to mention that. What was, so once that person received that, because I can see this issue playing out a lot across lots of different teams.
Yeah.
What was then the protocol for you, and how did you go around? What were your 100 ideas to figure out how to fix it?
Okay, so so first of all, we've got to wait for the penny to drop, and we've got to help that person through it, because it can be quite emotional depending on what the realization is. Okay, my team don't like each other. That's quite a big takeaway for a leader, or they don't feel comfortable with each other. Other key messages that many leaders I've worked with is, I'm a bit of a bully, right? I shoot people's ideas down. A lot of people don't see that. And so I remember one time I revealed to someone he was a bit of a bully and he shot people's ideas down. It took him a full 2 months to accept that before he came back to me and said, okay, now I'm willing to work on it. Because that's a big blow to his identity. Anyway, so in this circumstance, whereas the leader wanted me to come in and do more complex stuff with the team, I was like, no, my friend, we need to, all the ideas need to be way more basic, like building trust. Right? We need to do more fun team building stuff. We need to, the 100 ideas include things like, we're going to have a random coffee generator where you just pair 2 people, or a lunch generator. You pay for their lunch, right? We're going to play more games so people get to know each other, right? We're going to have a day where people can bring in their kids, right? So they can get to see another side of their life, or bring in a personal object or something, right? We're going to start every meeting with asking people, how are you? Right? It's those small things that seem stupid, but that quickly will, 2 weeks of this will get us up to at least a level 2 on the psychological safety. Right? Then we're going to run a formal meeting around ways of working, where you get everyone to share a little bit about their personality type, and you make agreements. Things like, do you know what? No meetings after 6 p.m. I appreciate if no emails after 9 p.m. Right, where you all, and you just make a little charter. This is what we all agreed to, but we all are involved in making that decision, rather than the boss writing it in his room and dictating on us.
Yeah.
Right? So it's little stuff like this, right, that will slowly inch us up to a place where we can then do some of the more complex stuff.
Yeah. I love that, and I love the shared ways of working. The kind of non-negotiables. Yeah.
And there's loads of nuances to that, and I run those sessions loads of times. Sometimes it's just basic stuff. Sometimes it gets more complicated. Something I like to do with every team is, when I'm the boss, is everybody gets one thing that we protect. Right? I don't care what your one thing is. We don't judge someone on their one thing, but it could be for person A, it's every Wednesday I want to go and pick up my kid from school at 3 p.m. Okay, we protect that. For person B, every Tuesday morning I want to go to a yoga class. Okay, you get that, right? We will protect it. We're all aware of it. We won't book any meetings with you. But you can't come and ask for a second thing, right? And you can't say, well, my thing's about my kids, but his thing's about going to a yoga class, right? I told everyone gets their one thing. That's how we have equity in the group, and we're all aware of it. And you can change your one thing over time, right?
Or even add in on more once you see the benefit of it.
Yeah, exactly, right. But it's you can't have one set of rules for one person and another set of rules. So that's, again, begins to create friction in teams and erode the trust and EQ.
Yeah. Okay. I guess, like, the last thing, and I think you've mentioned quite a lot of this already, because I think so much of this equation relies on this person, but the leader.
Yeah.
that manager or boss, there is such a vital role in all of this.
Yeah.
What do you do with them? Is it togetherness, or is it something separate, or do you have like specific parts of this equation you need to go through separately?
Look, everyone, there is an individual element, right? And it's not just the leader, right? So everything we do, we try and do with teams to try and get and either. But every individual can work on these things as well, right? In the IQ bucket, it will serve everyone well if they can improve their creativity. And I often run techniques for teams to get them more creative. And I say, practice this every day for a month. You will be a better idea generator, whatever the topic. All right. So don't be that person in the room. Go, well, the rest of my team are creative, so I'll leave it to them to come up with ideas. I'll just sit here drinking my coffee. Right. In the EQ bucket, everyone can be better listeners. Everyone can flex their style more. So we often teach individuals how to flex a style. Now, what that means is every conversation could be handled in a different way. But most of us just go into autopilot and have a conversation how we feel comfortable. But the best people are the ones who have a conversation with how the other person feels most comfortable. So do I use logic, or do I use a story, or do I use sort of lots of questions, or do I just tell them what to do, right? That should really be dependent on what the other person likes, not what you like. So on an individual basis, improve your skill to communicate in a different way. And then in the focus, try and get more focused, right? There are lots of little things you can do individually to get your focus improved, not just around prioritization, but around, before you do any activity, state out loud, what is the objective of your activity? Right? I am writing this email to, I am attending this meeting to, and if you don't know the answer to it, there's a fair chance that you shouldn't be writing that email or going into that meeting. Right. So little things like that to improve your level of focus, reduce distractions. I think we can all take ownership of and therefore enhance our own IQ, EQ, and FQ.
I love that. Faris, thank you. I mean, there's probably lots more. I guess rather than me beginning to close this down, I might throw that over to you. Is there anything else that you want to add around this topic?
Oh, look, I love this topic. I genuinely think there is improvements we can all make personally and in teams and in businesses. And I would just say, be curious and don't take on too much, right? That under the FQ banner, right? Don't go out and go, well, I'm going to improve my IQ, EQ, and F. No, pick one of them, right? Pick something in it, work on it for 2 weeks, see the impact. You'll be pleasantly surprised, right? And then start incorporating a second one. And so on, right? But look, if I can be of any more help with ideas or accountability for any of the listeners or your good self, then drop me a line.
No, 100%. I guess I'm actually just going to pick up on something you said about the FQ, which is really resonating with me lately. Somebody said to me in January, just recently, and it just reminded me of this statement. There's no plural for priority.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to focus in that FQ part, there is no plural for priority. So focus on that one thing, and that one thing will get you. You'll achieve more success by doing that.
That's a great saying. I love it. Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's really ringing true with a lot of things in my life at the moment. I think that just also leads into the FQ, which I think is also to put up that importance of one thing at a time, because you can't do more than one.
No,
I need to go away and look at my goals because I've probably got too many. They may look. I really appreciate it. And look, I can't let you go. I always have one question to round up our podcast with, and that's kind of top 3 take-home bits of advice.
Okay, top 3. Yeah. Okay. Look, I might be repeating some of what I said earlier, but I think it's be more curious. Right? A curiosity, there's a reason there's a saying around it. Ask one more question than you normally would in any situation. Not only will that mean you don't force your opinion on somebody else, but it means you get some more information. And hand in hand with that, improve your listening. If we could all listen just 10% better, would be in a much better place. And number 3, just be more positive, right? Good stuff happens to positive people. And so I often tell people, if you're about to go into a meeting, tell yourself a joke so you walk in smiling, and then more people in the room will be smiling. Right? It's amazing, that little nuance, what a difference it makes.
Yeah. And I promised you I wouldn't throw you under the bus, but I now want to know what your funny joke is. So you tell yourself.
I mean, I'll tell you the ones that, you know, are sort of PG friendly. What's brown and sticky? A stick. All right, it's stupid. It always gets me. If I tell that joke to my nephews, I go poo, obviously. But I love jokes that got a double answer depending on what the other person says.
Mate, I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed this opportunity as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Real pleasure.
Yeah. Wicked, mate. Stay where you are. Everybody else, I will see you soon. 2 weeks' time, I've got Pat on talking about sustainable high performance and his concept to how that happens and what you need to be doing to achieve that from an individual standpoint, which I think will probably tie into this conversation really, really well. But yeah, see you there. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Any questions for both of us, please drop us both a message, and we'll hopefully be able to answer. Otherwise, take care, everybody. Faris, stay there. Bye.
Bye.